Recovery Sort Of is a podcast where we discuss recovery topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The attitudes expressed are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised, there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature.
Welcome back to Recovery Sort Of. I'm Jason, a guy who is not drunk today, and I'm here with...
I'm Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
And today we have on Lewis. Hi, Lewis.
Hey, I'm Lewis. I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and I'm in the AA program.
Excellent, and that is exactly why Lewis is on today. We're going to investigate some of these misconceptions or possible truths, depending on how you look at it, that I have heard and that Billy has heard from our time in one particular program. And actually, maybe even after we have you defend your program enough, maybe we'll give you some time to tell us some of the things they say about us in AA. That's interesting. I don't know.
Fantastic.
Have you? What do we... Okay. Well,
we'll get into that.
Yeah. So do you want to just tell us like a 5-minute version, a quick version of your story and how you got here and what got you where you are at?
Absolutely. So, for me, my recovery journey started in 2013, in January 2013, right after all the Christmas money was gone. I decided that I needed some help. Years before that, it started for me with drinking, of course, and I'll kind of get into this a little bit, but after that, it turned into prescription pain medication. That was the thing that kind of brought me down. And then from there, I was doing a lot of IV heroin, going down to the city all the time, getting what I needed. And, once all the money was gone and the pain was great enough and I had enough, interventions, I guess, by like friends, family, law enforcement, things like that, decided to get sober. So I went to treatment, and there was a young guy working there who, I'd gotten pretty close with and told a lot of my story to. And he told me that there was a really good group of young guys in AA in Harford County. And that's how I got there. And, from there, I've been working in an AA program. I got an AA sponsor, AA home group. I'm trying to help some people and
by working
sober along
an
the
AA
way.
program, you mean speaking all the 12 steps in the first week and then not doing nothing else?
I was going to say, we could jump right into that.
So there is one of the first things that I was always told, and of course, most of my information comes from bitter old men in NA. But that, in NA, we have a step working guide, and we write the answers to all these questions. And what I found out later on is that I believe we all use it wrong, actually, but that's okay. We write them, right? We spend time, we're thorough, and I hear that in AA, you generally only write like 4 and 8, maybe, or something along them lines.
Yeah. So, it started, yes. So you write for 4 and 8. Absolutely.
And can I just give a minor disclaimer? So we're going to talk about our experience in NA, and you'll talk about your experience in AA, and they could be completely different we're the now 3 white guys giving a perspective on
Damn,
recovery.
Caroline.
We got a slight dig online because we're here the perspective of 2 white guys, and that's what we are. And so what?
Right.
If you don't like it, start a podcast. It's free. But our perspectives aren't necessarily everyone's perspectives, and different people work programs differently. And so this is just our way of having fun
and I keep saying we,
sort of joking about
NA, not we.
And it's
My
all meant in good
experience.
spirits. This isn't, it's just meant for
Hell
good,
no, we're
fun
bashing.
conversation. Programs that saved all of our lives, we love them. So, it's just fun to laugh and have a good time. Sorry.
No, it's fun. Well, as the spokesman of AA, here's what I'll say.
We'll be the spokesman of NA, and you can be the spokesman. We'll hash all this out.
So, a little bit, to go back in time a little bit, what I've learned is that AA started when, these 2 guys got sober. They started helping people, yada, yada, yada. back in the day, you went through the steps often and quickly. And that's how it was. And AA used to have what they said was like a 70% success rate. Because as a newcomer, you would come into this AA meeting, right? You come into the front door, there'd be a speaker meeting going on, and the greeter at the meeting would ask you, like, hey, are you new here? Have you been through the steps? If you say you hadn't been through the steps yet, they would take you into another room and someone would start taking you through the steps. Huh. So that's kind of like how it started. You know, groups only had one big book, so like everybody was helping each other and borrowing it and taking multiple people through the steps sometimes. So that is kind of true. There are people in AA. The first time I went through the steps was quick. We went through 1, 2, 3 on a car ride home to my recovery house, and I was like, "What? What do you mean?" You know,
no, and that's so funny because it takes months, sometimes years.
Yeah,
for people.
Can you imagine walking into your first meeting and they're like, "Have you worked the steps?" And you're like, "No," and they take you into a back room. Like, I'd be,
"Sir, come with me."
What the hell is going on? Strip search? What?
It's definitely a cult.
But I wasn't ready for that kind of, quickly through it. He asked me, he said, "Are you an alcoholic?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." He said, "Do you think that God can help with this?" And I said, "Yeah."
Oh, he just laid right into God too?
He pulled the curtain back real quick.
That's funny. In NA, we were like, step 2's not God.
Yeah,
step 2's the power
overanalyze the shit out of it.
3's God, right? Yeah. Not 2.
Intellectualize.
Yeah, so he brought that in quick, and I just said yes because I felt like it was the thing I should have said. And he started me writing on a 4-step, which I think I wrote on like a napkin or something. Wow. It was like Mom, Dad, God. That was like on my 4-step. So.
They jump right in because they're way closer with spirits.
Yeah. Sorry. But, to me, there's a lot of different ways to go through the steps. Right now, I'm sponsoring a guy who I'm using a step working guide with. It was, kind of a different model that somebody else used along the way that has a lot of, just regular kind of general 12-step values on it. It's like a general way through the 12 steps.
The old Hazelton manuals from treatment.
It's similar. I forget where it originated, but one of my sponsors along the way took me through it. And I feel comfortable taking certain people through it like that. There's also the intellectual who wants to read the book cover to cover, and he might get a lot more out of doing it like that. So,
now, does AA have like an official step working guide that's like an Alcoholics Anonymous?
It's just the book. Yep, it's the first 1work pages of the big book.
I mean, because like Jason said, we have like a NA step working guide.
Yeah.
Workbook. It's a workbook with a bunch of questions. Like it's pretty specific.
I don't know that this is true for every other fellowship or program, but I'm pretty sure everyone I've gone to has some... No, that's not true. I was going to say that has some more formal version of writing each step, but I don't think the SAA did. No, I can't remember. But a lot of them work with some kind of workbook.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that AA kind of holds to that they don't.
Yeah.
What do you think about that 70% shit? I think
that's lofty. It's lofty.
That threw me off. I was like,
yeah.
70%?
And I learned that from a friend of mine who, I kind of met along my professional journey, who was the archivist for AA for a long time.
I love the history of those programs.
I mean, he I'll never remember half the stuff he said, but it's
right.
amazing, some of it. And he swears by this back to basics program that they used to do. And I mean, the recipe's in the book. That's what they say. If you read through the 164 pages, the first 164 of the big book, it lays it out pretty easily. It tells you when you're at step 1 and when you're at step 2. When you're at step 3, it's got a prayer. It gives you, how to write your 4th step. It's got pretty much everything in there.
So I was just going to ask about in the reading of the book, like I have tried to read some literature and researching for this, and it is so difficult. It feels like I'm almost reading the Bible in that old English, these, thys, and that.
Yeah.
Like, are they not willing to like our edition of or I shouldn't say our, in Narcotics Anonymous, the basic text has been rewritten like 6 times in a very short amount of time. Every couple of years, they're like, this is offensive. We got to change it. We got to take this out. Somebody might not like it. We need to add new stories. And they just change this shit all the time.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I agree with you. It's old-timey. Some of it's nonsensical. It's written as a, I'm not trying to bash the program that I love so much.
Sure you are.
But it's written as a stream of consciousness from a drunk who just got sober. I mean, it's tough to understand. And, I'm told that there's a certain I forget how many, but there's a certain number of passages in that book that pertain to step work completely. That's the ones we focus on when we're doing step work. Some of it, there's chapters like to wives and to employers that I don't read. Yeah, we don't read that, like, personally.
So why don't they just take that shit out? Like, I'm pretty sure
the atheist or something.
I'm pretty sure in 2021, everybody's well aware that that's really shitty to have a section 2 wives.
Yeah,
like that's pretty cruddy. So why? What is the pushback against like changing this, updating the language, taking that kind of crap out?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, we have plenty of, general service meetings and intergroup meetings where a home group can bring something up. Like at my home group, we could bring up the fact that like, hey, this old-timey language into wives is A, nonsense, and B, it's offensive.
Right.
And we can bring that up to the next level, and it can keep going up to the ladder, to world services. I think, in my opinion, that there's a little bit of this, how in baseball, they don't want to change any of the rules, right?
It's like the Constitution.
It's kind of like that. It's like, why change this thing that has worked so well for so many people that, is the father of all these other things, and why change it? I don't necessarily agree with it. But
and people will always debate that stuff because it happens with the NA basic text over the years. Certain verbiage has been changed slightly. There's little things like it used to be the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop using, and they took the word honest out. Now it's just a desire, and people will debate that shit like it's some sort of major crime.
So I've never opened the big book. Are you saying that the big book is basically just like straight through written? It's not broken down into chapters or topics or anything?
It's broken down into chapters and topics, but a lot of this stuff, I mean, there's certain passages that, when they're talking about, let's say like the second and third step, there's a lot of examples that, the author gives, and you get through it, and especially for someone like myself who wasn't that into reading when I got sober. I didn't want to have to open this like textbook, to do all this work. And I get through some of these chapters and I'm like, what in the hell what did I read? I have no idea. He gave me 36 different examples on like, the Wright brothers and the breaking of the atom. And I'm just like, what does this have to do with it?
I would joke with him because I really started reading a lot of that when we got into tradition stuff. I said, of course, all this, these 12-step fellowships come from AA. They're all founded on that. Yeah. So let's go read some of that before we get into these traditions. And half the time I read it, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I just read. Like, I have no idea. And like you said, it's these examples of like the Wright brothers and bizarre things.
And there's certain chapters and certain steps that you go back to where it's like, okay, well, this part was, let's say, on page like 40, but the second step part is on page like 32. And it's like, why am I going back here? Because it's, they're talking about it and writing it all down because I got to do it. I got to write all this stuff down. And it's like a stream of consciousness sometimes.
It's like the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's all
in there. Better.
It's like,
that's their
telling
main
you.
Literature. That's funny. Jesus. Oh, so the thing, I have heard the idea, get people through the 12 steps because that raises the chances of people staying clean. Mm-hmm. We had a big, large sponsorship family in Baltimore at one point. Jimmy the Pope and, all his people underneath of him, which was like, tentacles everywhere. And they were doing a step a month for the first year with everybody. Like that was their rule. Mm-hmm. And the theory was if you get through the 12 steps, you have more likely chance of staying clean. And there was debate about that. And I don't know where exactly I stand with that. Like, I know I could work through the steps quicker than I did, but I don't know that I really would have gained that internal felt understanding of it until the right time came, whether that was a certain amount of time clean I needed, a certain amount of recovery experience. Like, I don't know what it was, but all these factors came together. So there's parts of step 2 that I might have worked it in the first year, but they really hit home in year 6, right? Because it just took that kind of time to get it. Do you think it really helps to speed through them or go through them faster? Or do you get it when you get it?
There's certain parts of this you're just going to get when you get,
right.
You know, I mean, you brought up the second and third step. I think that's something that, you know, for me in the beginning, I didn't even look at. I ended up relapsing and coming back, working the steps a different way. When I worked them again, I didn't really get it then either. I was told, you know, as far as the second step goes, if you believe that I believe, that's a good head start.
Huh.
When it comes to the third step, you should probably do the rest of the steps. And that's kind of the way I looked at it then. And that's the way I was taught with my sponsor. Over time, my concept of a higher power started to grow. I started to realize, you know, this is certain things I should put into practice. But I don't see any harm in going through the steps early, often. I just don't think it's for everybody.
Well, I guess if all we had to do was talk about it for a couple minutes, I wouldn't feel like I wasted my time too much. If we had to like write on it and go over for 3 hours, I might not want to invest so much.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about it in terms of like peeling back layers of the onion. You know, your first 4 step might have 2 names on it. And if that's as thorough and honest as you can get in the beginning, you know, that's it. But you'll go through it again in the future, especially when you're doing the steps this kind of way. You'll get more out of it. And you'll be able to, you know, contribute more to your step work.
Well, and I did notice, I mean, I keep saying we as well. In Narcotics Anonymous, there is a saying that says, you know, this program is a set of principles written so simply that we can follow them in our daily lives. But if it takes you fucking 12 years to get to step 12, how, you know, are you really practicing it in your daily life if you haven't even thought about it for 10 years?
So had you said step 11, I would have said no. But step 12, when people ask me to speak, I show up and I'd be of service. So yes, I was already giving it back long
step
before
11.
that. I was surely not praying and meditating well before step 11. That didn't happen. So yeah, I mean, you kind of got a point.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about the steps every meeting. We always read, you know, the 12 steps. So you kind of got an understanding, you know. I think in AA, and I'm sure it's the same way in NA too, but, you know, we talk about working the steps on a daily basis. You know, got to work step 1 every day, obviously. You know, step 2 and 3. Not necessarily working a 4th and 5th step every day, but at least bringing those, you know, values into your life. Like, I'm not trying to make any more harm. And when I do, I try to fix it pretty quickly, you know, turning my will and my life over, turning my defects of character over. These things you do every day.
We don't say that. Working the steps every day sounds hard. It's work.
Yeah.
We say we live the steps every day.
Which
sounds
means you just
easier.
do the best you can and then just try to look for spiritual principles.
There's no work.
Yeah. There's no work, man. I'm in the wrong
And I
one.
guess the only thing that sounds to me is like a little bit, I don't know, frightening about that is like an 8th and 9th step and trying to make amends with a few months clean of like, have I really dug into how selfish and self-centered I am when I'm trying to make these amends? I mean,
yeah,
that's the only one that sounds a little bit
tough.
like, oof, that's tough, you know, with a couple of months clean.
Yeah,
Fuck, I wasn't even aware of the depths of myself.
Right. Yeah. I'm still not.
Yeah, right. I'm still learning.
Well, thinking about my 8 and 9, I was super thankful because a lot of the people I owed the amends to had already experienced most of the living amends for, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but quite some time by the time I got there to do that. And so it was actually a lot easier and less overwhelming to do the step. But I mean, I screwed up trying to make an amends before I did the step at all early on with like 6 months. And I'm thinking, had I done this step, I would have had a better understanding. and been a little more prepared for when I told somebody something that they didn't want to hear. I still don't think, like Billy was saying, I really would have been able to come and motivate myself from what I would call today the right place to do a 9th step, right? I would have been following through with the motions, but I just wouldn't have had that.
Yeah.
Not at 6
If
months.
You got a good sponsor, you would think that you would still, like you
I think
would.
that's a feeling.
At least I would like to think you would reap the spiritual benefits of just going through the motions.
I would say
there would still be
this.
spiritual growth.
If I made my amends at 6 months, I would probably then have to make those same amends at 3 years when I got a deeper understanding, and then make those same amends when I even got it. And I mean, look, I do this in my life now. Like, I've apologized to my wife for the same thing 4 and 5 times as I grasp the more damage it really did, right? Like, I can only see what damage I did on the surface at first, and then a little while later, a year later, it's like, oh shit, that was really fucked up that I did that. Like, now I got to go say, and I do, and I go apologize again, right? But it's interesting. I guess it doesn't matter in that context.
I mean, most people, from my understanding, especially around where I live in Hartford County,
don't make it to 8.
Spot on. Got me there.
Yeah. Most people, it takes about, I want to say, between like 9 months and a year to go through the steps.
Oh, really?
Most people, yeah.
Oh, we got the idea. It was like a week.
No.
A month.
A couple of days.
There's different sects of AA that do that. The more like purists, I guess, people who are like, you got to do it exactly how the book says. But especially from my understanding, my neck of the woods, it's more of like the 9 months to a year through the steps.
Reasonable.
Yeah, it's not so
reasonable. But there are still people who go through it real quick. I mean, they told me to make my first amends my first time. I mean, I had a couple months sober, and like you said, I messed it up completely with my dad, and it was painful, and it took years to fix.
Yeah.
And when I went back through it, and it took me about, I'd say 11 or 12 months to get through the steps, I wasn't ready to make that amends yet, because I was still working on calling him and having a conversation. Nonetheless, like saying, an apology and trying to fix it. I wasn't there. But, a lot of the people, especially the younger guys that I sponsor now, we start with family, and it's usually around like 10, 11, 12 months with these amends. With the guys that I've sponsored recently, start with the mom, the dad, and then go from there. Ones that like, I know you have a relationship with, let's start there, let's get them out of the way, and we'll snowball from there to like tougher ones, ones that you might get an answer you don't like.
And you've kind of already answered this next piece, talking about like generally, I was always given the idea that in AA you do the steps once, like there was no following through and doing them again, and in NA, I was always told, my experience is that you just keep working through them. As soon as you finish 12, you start back over at 1. And you've alluded to working these multiple times, but that is definitely not what I heard. Is that? I
mean, I've been through the steps six times now, and different ways. Like I said, the first time, I wouldn't necessarily count that because I didn't really go through them completely, but then I used a step working guide, and then I went through it, right out of the book, like the book says to do. And then I did this Back to Basics program, which was, a group of people went through the steps, and you kind of paired up with somebody else who was like your sharing partner for the day, who I would, somebody I didn't know, who I would share my certain parts of my 4-step with that were pertinent to that time in my life. That was one day of step work, went through all 12 steps.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, I've been through them a couple of different ways. I don't know if everybody does that. A lot of the guys that I kind of run with, we've been through the steps multiple times. And I'll tell the guys that I sponsor, this isn't going to be your first time or last time.
We got to call up Jim with his 2 times through in 7 years. This guy's got 6 times through.
6, man. I got the belt.
Yeah. And is that, so those other sort of programs, was that, I don't know how to say this, within like the AA fellowship context or things outside?
Yeah, it's just different ways, different recipes to bake the same cake. It's people's what's worked for them with their sponsor. You know, I've changed sponsors. I've had really 3 different sponsors during my time. 3 different ways of going through the steps. And then, you know, the Back to Basics program was something completely different. But yeah, I mean, everybody does it differently. You can get 2 people who have went through the book the same way, and you're going to get a different outlook on it from these 2 people.
So I'm curious, and this is something I have always wondered, because when I first got clean, I was told by my sponsor that all the guys in AA didn't drink, but they still like snorted coke and smoked weed and shit. And so I always thought that was interesting. I was like, I'm sure at this point in my life, I'm sure there are people who probably believe that, right? That probably live that and shit. But in general, do alcoholics really think that their only problem is alcohol? Or do people in AA meetings understand that they're talking about addiction?
Yeah, this is AA is a completely abstinence-based program.
Of everything?
Everything.
That's weird.
Everything.
Don't you find that weird?
No.
Really?
I mean, right now, it's a tough question because, like, I know personally that I can't do. I mean, I'm here because of heroin, right? You know, I wasn't ever really that big of a drinker. It's just, I'm just in AA, so I know that I can't put any substance into my body that's mind or mood altering. You know, if I do, it's got to come from a doctor who I have tried other methods of solving this problem, or have had some sort of catastrophic injury. You know, that's how I think about it. I don't think that, you know, we ever talk about, oh, you could do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. You know, it's everything. It's completely abstinence based.
So nobody's like up there getting sober medallions or coins or whatever the hell they got, chips, and you know they're dabbling on the side. Just
I didn't say
smoking
that.
weed.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm sure it's the same in NA too. I mean, people lie about clean time.
Well, I'm thinking people who aren't lying.
Yeah,
who
I
are
mean,
saying this is just
they'll claim
I'm sober.
Yeah.
Or more the thing is say, like, look, I'm sober. I haven't drank in 8 years, but I smoke weed every day.
Yeah.
Like,
there are those people.
yeah. And so I guess in NA, like, yeah, obviously there's people that lie about being clean, but that always happens.
Well, I see plenty of people who, you know, will post on their social media, oh, I haven't, you know, it's been 6 years. And I'm like, well, I know you do this.
Right.
So
See,
I don't know what
that.
they're thinking.
Yeah.
Are they thinking that, you know, I've been in AA before, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, and this sort of ties into some of that. And again, I'm going back to what I can't say it's been my personal experience, but what I've heard or what people have said is that if you go to certain meetings and talk about drugs or using, that you'll be told, you know, we don't talk about that here, or that isn't where we deal with that. There's another place for you to go, and it's not here.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of why it's sometimes like, well, how come if you have a drug problem, you would go there if you're told it's not okay to talk about that there? Like, that seems weird.
That's definitely something that still happens. You know,
They still say that?
Yeah, you can get some salty old timers who will be like, you know, we don't talk about that here. There's a fellowship for you.
Are there meetings that you go to, AA meetings, where everybody's talking about heroin?
Absolutely.
That's weird.
There's meetings where almost 100% of the people in there are in there for heroin. But there are those meetings with those old timers who are like, you know, there's a fellowship for you. I don't go to those meetings.
How many pure alcoholics are there that literally never took a pain pill, never snorted a line of coke, just alcohol? How many of them?
That's got to be a very small number these days.
I would think.
I would say these days,
in my circle, the circles that, you know, I run with, I could probably tell you 1 or 2.
Huh. I didn't think there'd be any.
It is few and far between, man. Yeah.
That's weird.
But yeah, I mean, the good thing about that is, like, you don't have to go to those meetings. You know, it's a crotchety old timer who's stuck in his ways, and don't go to it.
Right.
It is, but I gotta say, this is kind of fucked up to me. So I read an AA piece of literature one time. It was a pamphlet that talked about why they don't talk about drugs in their meetings and how it could ultimately, if they don't put a stop to that, there could eventually ultimately one day be a meeting where an alcoholic, just alcoholic, walks in and doesn't relate in, right? He compares out because he's like, these motherfuckers are talking about shooting heroin and this, that, and the other. And he could die and not hear the message, right? And so I kind of, as much as I hated it, I respected it. I was like, well, that does kind of have a point. And so I wonder, like, with people not really upholding that, I get it. That guy's kind of a bitter old guy who's holding on to some old shit. But at the same time, this is where I get really confused. And I think Billy was kind of alluding to this. Like, and don't get me wrong, I get why you went there, right? You met a guy in your rehab. He made it seem comfortable and inviting. You clicked with him. Makes total sense why you went. But in my mind, I'm like, this is why it doesn't make any fucking sense when heroin addicts go to AA. And this is why alcoholics at some point might die because the fucking meeting is full of heroin addicts and AA. Like, this is why we have NA. What the fuck is going on? Like, and I'm not trying to be.
No, I'm glad you brought that up,
but I don't get it.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's important to the fact that there is multiple fellowships, right? There's AA, there's NA, there's all these other A's. When you have AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, people will come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's say there's some guy who lives under a rock, never heard of any other of these things, never heard of treatment, and he comes to an AA meeting because he's got a drinking problem, right?
Why is this guy living under a rock?
Because, I don't know. He doesn't know. He doesn't got a lot of that. Whatever. So he comes to AA thinking that this is a fellowship of people who one time had a drinking problem and they figured out a way to deal with it. If there's 20 young kids in there just talking about heroin, you're right. He's going to say, well, this isn't the place for me. So it is, as far as traditions go, and it's important to uphold that. I think that some of the things that I do to make sure that I'm in line with AA traditions is if I'm at a meeting or if there's a newcomer in a meeting, I make sure that we first talk about AA, what AA is. I don't talk about a bunch of drugs and I don't get graphic with anything. I make sure the person feels comfortable, that they're here for a reason. The reason that they think they're here, is that it's a room full of drunks. When I share in a meeting and I don't know everybody in the room, I say drink. And I put that in for every other drug in my story. Just because it's the tradition of AA, like you said. I want to make sure that if somebody's here for just alcohol, that they feel comfortable. We could talk about more after the meeting. You can substitute, I'll say during my share, you can substitute anything you want into it. I've done plenty of other substances. We could talk about that after the meeting. But,
I just, and maybe this is me being my own little stickler, which is very like me, so that's fair. But like if I had a problem with going out and buying prostitutes every day, I wouldn't go to Gambling Anonymous to try to fix it and not talk about the actual exact problem, right? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't substitute glory hole for gambling debt or whatever the hell. That was a terrible analogy, but whatever. Like
it made sense to me.
Right. Yeah. So I just don't get it. Like, wouldn't it make a lot more sense if heroin addicts went to NA and alcoholics went to AA? And this was kind of my theory, and this was more like some carryover thinking from my early days when I had a sponsor who hated AA and all that shit, right? And it was more like AA would die off at this point, honestly. But what are some reasons that people who use drugs go to Alcoholics Anonymous instead? Like, I know Billy's talked about location, and there might not be an NA meeting. Mm-hmm. Is it social acceptability to be an alcoholic over an addict, or is there something else?
Probably is.
You went for comfort because you ran into somebody who happened to be
just
a part
a familiar
of that.
face.
Yeah.
What other reasons?
So I think there's, you brought up the stigma aspect of it. Mm-hmm. It's we know it's way more acceptable to drink than it is to use heroin.
In 2021?
I still think so.
Yeah, in a professional setting for sure.
Well, okay. it's more acceptable to drink than to use heroin currently. Yes. Right? You can't say I'm going out to bang a few heroines after work, right? Right. I get that. But I think the recovery aspect, if you've got 5-10 years, I don't think there's that much difference in them personally. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm skewed.
I would think in a place of business,
Really?
in a professional setting, if you told your coworkers you went to AA or you told them that you went to NA, there would be a very different stigma that came along with it.
Yeah.
Well, fuck them people.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. So
But I definitely think that's there. Accessibility, I still think, there's way more, I'm guessing, there's way more AA meetings than there are NA meetings.
Really?
I would venture to say so.
So you're
surprising,
in this
actually.
Cecil, Harford County area.
Harford County.
So I don't know how they divide up their areas. And
yeah, I think
how
our
many
district
meetings do you
kind
think
of
are just
includes
in Harford County, like during a week.
We at one point before COVID had about 150
a week.
Oh,
a week.
Oh,
that's definitely more.
Oh, that's way more. Yeah.
What about in Baltimore, though? I feel like Baltimore's got like 582 fucking NA meetings a week.
Yeah, but probably 3/4 of them don't actually meet, even though they're on the schedule. So.
Are AA schedules as bad as NA schedules?
Yes. Are the websites as bad? I haven't been doing NA websites
that's pretty
recently.
rough.
Yeah, we got some pretty rough ones.
Yeah.
But
so there are quite a few more meetings. That sounds.
I think so.
Yeah.
I would venture to say so. I'm just looking at like
for me.
from if we go down. And I was talking about this with somebody the other day, just like these more, like Marijuana Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, like you're only going to be able to find some of these meetings in major metropolitan areas,
right.
So I think it scales up to AA as being around the longest. There's probably more AA meetings.
Well, in our experience traveling is the more rural you get, the harder and harder it is to find anything but AA meetings.
Yeah,
we've been in areas where even as the Grand Canyon, so we spent some time out in the Grand Canyon, and that
are they actually in the canyon?
There was a meeting at the top south rim,
right?
But yeah, they only had AA meetings. There weren't NA meetings around.
I get that in rural areas, and I totally buy in. I'm like, that makes sense. There's more AA out here. It's more acceptable for, more.
And even then, you're talking a super limited, like 2-3 a week, not many. But there's none of the other ones.
And I'm not, I guess I am doubting you. I don't want to say you're wrong, right? But I would really be curious the numbers in more metropolitan city areas to see if it's more equal or if AA still skews way more. Because I'm shocked by that, honestly. I would think if anything, they're more equal. But I
in
thought
certain
NA
areas
would
it's
have
probably
more.
close.
I wonder if there's a cultural piece to it too. I mean, just
you mean like white people go to
in the city?
AA?
Well, or white sort of, hate to say this, but almost equals affluent. But when you have an affluent drug users compared to like inner city drug users,
I mean, through my experience, I know it's kind of like that in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I know plenty of, affluent people who might have a really good job too. And I know that they, they're in there for a certain thing, but they're going to AA.
How many black AA members you got over there in Harford County?
Dude, it's not a lot.
Wow.
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think AAs were, and I'm not saying this about you, Lewis, I swear to God, but do you think AAs were like maybe more traditional Christian, possibly slightly still racist people go?
I wouldn't say that's the motivation.
No,
I would say it's just an end result. Because, just to be honest, there is a certain level of behavior to I don't know what you call a lower end heroin addict that's going to do anything to use, versus someone who's got parents with money, who doesn't have to resort to the same sort of thing.
Is AA just a sober VFW? Is that all the fuck this is now?
Yeah. With a golf course behind it.
And none of it on, it is fucking me talking out of my ass now, but none of it on purpose. It's all just where you're comfortable. Like, you're going to go where you're comfortable, And if I went to a meeting in the city with a bunch of people that I wasn't really comfortable with, I don't know how often I would keep going back. I would search out a meeting that I felt more comfortable at, whether that means a bunch of other white guys or just people that used like me or had a similar story to me. I wasn't a crackhead, so it's sometimes hard to relate when someone starts talking about the crazy shit that goes along. I never dug through the carpet picking shit out of the carpet or peeped through the blinds, thinking the cops were there. Like, that's just not anything that I ever really experienced.
Man, I have never before been thankful that I was a multi-drug user.
I didn't like crack that much. I liked them all better. But anyway, it's just, I just didn't have that experience. So if I went to a meeting, no matter what they looked like, and it was 10 people sit around talking about crack,
yeah,
I probably wouldn't go back that much. I mean, if they stayed with the feelings and got away from the specifics behaviors, it would be easier. But, that doesn't happen all the time.
I don't know. I feel like I came in here and I might end up being more judgmental at the end of this. Like, is this where the races go? But like you said, not on purpose, but just people who are seeking out and people who are less comfortable getting outside their box sometimes, right? Might like to associate more with people more like them. And that could, the socioeconomic statuses, the different levels of that. That's interesting.
I think it comes down to region as well, too.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but,
I'll make them up. We do.
60% of the 70%.
There you go.
No, but just to tie into what you said, I would imagine, I can't say this for sure, but AA meetings in Towson area of Baltimore probably have a way different makeup than AA meetings in Hamden. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, those two areas are going to have a very different feel and vibe and, thing going on, clientele, if you will, to the meeting.
Now they're fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have clientele.
Only the Towson AA has clientele.
Yeah. Right.
The Hamden AA's just got some fucking people.
They got homeless bums. Right.
I'm fine with shitting on Towson AA too. Right. We have a long-standing beef.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, fuck Towson.
Yeah.
Rich bastard.
This episode has been brought to you in part by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit recovery organization made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, harm reduction and support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopemaryland.org and consider donating to our cause. I mean, I ended up in NA solely because when I got into recovery, the places that I went said, young people are over here, go to these meetings. And so I ended up in NA meetings. It's almost, and I didn't necessarily pick. It's not like I went to both and then said, oh, this one fits me better. It was just almost like, you had mentioned, like, someone said you should go over here, so I went over there. And that's all that went into the thinking behind it.
You say that, but if anybody would have said, hey, heroin addict, there's Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, I'm pretty sure you'd have chose the NA meeting. Like, that's how I felt. Like, yeah, obviously, I'm not.
Well, and it depends on how you frame the question. So if they said, hey, you can go over to these meetings, there's a bunch of crazy old biker dudes and meth heads over there, and there's a bunch of well-established people with some real recovery over here, I might have made a different choice.
Huh.
And that could be how it is in some regions with the disparity between AA and NA. You could have a lot of really strong sobriety in certain areas just in AA and then just maybe not that strong in NA.
You know why? Because all the fucking drug addicts are going to AA instead of spreading themselves around.
They're all over identifying as alcoholics.
Right. That's the problem. That's why we got no leadership.
Grabbing them up like draft picks.
All the leadership took a step up.
Do people in AA think that alcoholism is different than addiction?
No.
Okay. I was always curious about that. I mean, we had a guy on here that says it is. What's his name? Shit.
The 100% success rate?
Yeah, I want to call him Ricky Bobby. fuck's that guy's name? Robb Kelly.
Robb Kelly.
Yeah, Robb Kelly says that he thinks alcoholism is different than addiction. And you're like, who the fuck's Robb Kelly, right? Yeah.
Right.
The addiction doctor, apparently.
The
I don't know. We had him
addiction
on.
doctor,
It was
Robb Kelly.
interesting. Super
You
likable
can
guy.
listen to that episode. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. I'm not sure I bought in when he said that, but that was definitely, he said through his research, he felt like there was a
In
fundamental
the brain.
difference.
He said in the chemistry in the brain.
Yeah. And I don't know. The things he described that made you a true alcoholic are the exact same things I feel like makes me a true addict, honestly.
Right.
I don't know, but
I mean, I don't believe that there is any difference. I mean, it's coming from somebody who's, probably should have a seat at the NA meeting anyway, but...
why are we trusting his information? He's confused.
You need to find a true alcoholic.
They don't exist.
Right.
But I work with plenty of them who, during a meeting, there is no wavering on any difference between alcoholism and addiction. There's never any talk of, well, we're different because we're alcoholics. It's the same.
What about the whole California sober idea?
Come on.
I mean, so this California sober thing, this was exactly what my first sponsor kind of sold me as what AA was about.
So can you explain that term? I've heard the term, and I think I know what it means, but can
generally
you
just that
you
you don't drink alcohol, but chilling out with some weed and hanging out and maybe I guess some pills or this or that or the other, but basically you just don't drink is the main point of it. I'm pretty sure they would frown upon, shooting heroin or something too. But but generally, drugs are okay for a good time.
Recreational.
Yeah. But no drinking, though, no matter what.
I mean, that might work for some people. The AA book, it says that there's different kinds of alcoholics, right? There's the manic depressive, there's the problem drinker, and there's the true alcoholic. I don't know even where I fit into that.
Yeah.
I don't know where you guys might fit into that. I don't know where somebody who thinks and is successful with this California sober thing fits into that. But, I mean, not everybody who's in an AA meeting might be necessarily have to be there.
If NA had 3 different qualifications for different types of addicts, we would judge the fuck out of each other. We would be like, no, the manic depressive addict is an asshole. He's the worst. Right?
Yours only counts for half a vote.
Yeah. Right. We need the true addicts in here.
But that's something that, in my experience, has gotten AA into trouble in Bel Air. There's been times, since I've been sober where there's a certain small sect of people who were like, you're not doing the steps the right way, and only true alcoholics should be sponsoring people, and it gets way into cult type stuff, and those people go away. So that's not necessarily something it's in the book. Like I said, not all of it's super pertinent information, but it is in the book. We just don't really
that
talk
thing about the Wright brothers helped me stay sober.
Thank God.
You said you didn't have a lot of experiences going to NA meetings, or you went to a few, or just...
I've been to a few NA meetings. I mean, I don't see any fundamental difference, between the AA that I'm used to and NA. I really don't see any difference. I mean, you guys have a different book that's probably got a lot of the same type stuff in it.
No, we don't talk about the Wright brothers at all.
I mean, the steps, though, or, I don't see any real difference. I mean, personally, I just think it's just about where you land at this day and age. I do take into effect the traditions that you brought up. It is important to keep AA as AA for the newcomer who's coming in. But once you get here, I mean, it's really all the same thing, isn't it?
Is it important, though? Are we creating and perpetuating stigma by keeping this idea of alcoholics separate from the idea of addicts? Like, oh, well, if you're an alcoholic, you can be more socially acceptable. If you're an addict, you're not. Should we just make 2 Narcotics Anonymous programs at this point?
If you guys want to merge them all, we can start leading the charge.
NA
we want to start our own. We don't think NA.
Yeah, fuck NA.
We're gonna fix everyone's problem with our program.
Yeah,
so.
aren't all these programs working the same 12 steps pretty much?
Are they?
So that seems to be an area where people would, at least again, traditionally, what I've heard in NA is that through AA and saying alcohol, you're only dealing with a substance, whereas addict deals with the all-encompassing, like the spiritual self-centeredness around all your behavior. So addiction can manifest through sex, money, gambling, whatever. And where alcohol or just using the word alcohol focuses specifically on substance.
Yeah. Well, we do that too. It's a lot of the behaviors, people come in and they're problem gamblers and they're running around on their, spouses or whatever. Getting down to the root causes and conditions is prevalent throughout AA too. I mean, we have the sex inventory list on the 4th step and
page 69.
Yeah, and the
There's one thing I like about
fears.
AA. They got that one right.
It's a good place for it. We have all that stuff. And you'll, through a good run through the steps, if you got a good sponsor and you're working a good, honest program, you're going to cover all that stuff too.
So it's a good, honest program.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be honest. If you go through it and like I did my first time, you're like, I just ate my mom and dad, You're not going to get anything.
Especially in the young crowd, you may hear this. Do they still say you go to NA to get laid, you go to AA to get recovery?
Is that a thing?
That's an old cliche that I heard.
We got a lot of long-standing beefs between AA and NA.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know. But I go to NA and that's not working. Neither of them.
I don't think...
No, that was like an old... Again, most of what I know goes back like 20 years.
Yeah.
I haven't been to...
I think there's some misinformation about the amount of sobriety in NA, and I think that AA... People think there's just more sober people in AA with longer amounts of time. And I mean, there's a lot of, we'll say like, oh, you can go to NA, but you won't get done the steps till you're 40. So, things like that.
Might be true.
I mean, most of us don't get here till 54, so probably averaging it out, sure, yeah.
That's always something that I don't understand that part of it, why it takes so long. And, I know, the step working guide, but I've heard people going through a step a year, and that seems outrageous to me.
I don't think it's that the process itself actually takes that long. I think what happens is, like, you get clean, you get 90 days, you finally choose a sponsor or whatever, if you take that long, right? You get into step 1, it's a fuck ton of questions. It really is. Like 96, 69?
So that's why,
shit ton.
Guys I sponsor that are new, I don't do the step working guide with them. I give them something else.
I don't blame you.
That's part of why, because that's fucking, you open this book and there's all these questions
daunting.
like, holy fuck, this is like homework. Fuck
But
this.
either way, you run through that because you don't even have a job yet. Then you start to get a job. Step 2 is not quite as bad, so you get through it. 3, you start to get into 4. 4 is a fucking time-consuming step with all the writing it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's not so much that the process takes that long. I think at different portions in time, when you're going from 4 through 12, there's times where life gets busy. Oh, hey, look, I made a family. I bought a house. I'm working 70 hours this week. And you set it down for quite extended periods of time until you get miserable.
Yeah.
And then you pick it back up. And so it's a lot of these like 3 to 6 month breaks in it is what I think it is. I don't think it's the fact that
I mean, that's what happened
do
for me specifically was that, I went through my first 3 steps in the first couple of months because I didn't have anything else a lot going on. And
And same for me, right? My first time through took quite a bit. But I have noticed that if I steadily work at a very easy, convenient pace for me that doesn't seem overwhelming, 3 steps a year is not a problem at all. 3 to 4. Easy.
But that is a downside to all the writing and the step guide and all the questions. Is it does seem like a lot. I mean, I'm in between working a step right now, and I got to pick it up and start it. I'm like, fuck, this is like a commitment. Like, it's not like I can just go talk to my sponsor for an afternoon. We can go fucking have a hot dog and
well, what the
sit
fuck
out
are
on
we
the
doing,
back
Billy?
porch and have a conversation about step 3. It's like I got to do all this fucking homework. It's going to be like 3 hours, 4 hours of writing.
I justifiably set down 6 in last September and have not yet picked it up.
Yeah.
I mean, that just is something that I don't know if I understand enough to have a decent opinion on it, but that seems like too long.
It is. I mean, that's a valid criticism, I think.
My point would be, where the fuck you going?
I don't know. If you want relief, when do you want it?
Well, and my justification now is, well, I've been through the steps once already. Like, what, now it's different. I want to be more thorough. I want to be more engaging. But even the first time through, we could definitely do more pushy. And it is, again, not being at many AA meetings. In our meetings, it's almost upsetting when people don't talk about working the steps as the program. And there does seem to be a lot of that in NA.
Quite a bit of that.
Is people talk about, I'm living the program and all this stuff. What step you on? When's the last time you picked it up?
Yeah.
Oh, I fucking don't even talk to my sponsor when I talk about the program. I'm talking about, I go to my home group. I hang out afterwards with some clean people, and we hang out on the weekends and we don't do drugs. Like, that's the program. Like, no, that's not it.
Is that in AA too?
The 12 steps are the program.
But do you experience?
Oh, you see plenty of people who, will come to meetings and, they might be going to 7, 10 meetings a week, and they go out and get coffee with you afterwards and go to the diner, but they're not doing anything.
Oh, yeah. Meeting makers make it, right?
I mean, the steps are the program.
Right.
The book is the steps. It's just.
But I feel like
something
that
I try
can
to
easily
preach.
get lost in our meetings, how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
oh man, we're gonna make up percentages again. I would say half the meetings I've been to in the last 8 years never mentioned a step, not from any one chair of anybody.
I try to be that person. That's what I've learned. That's my responsibility. But I don't know. It fucking helps. But gotta slip it in there somewhere.
And that's always been my. I don't even know if it's a criticism, but I guess it's just misinformation that's in my head just about, and it's something that I question is like, why does it take so long? Why are we waiting so long to go through this life-saving work?
Yeah.
Well, and I think from my perspective, which is more justifying why we do, right? Because that's where I'm at.
Let me justify for you for a minute.
Let me defend myself. I would say when I say the statement like, well, where the fuck you going, right? I say that to mean kind of what we talked about earlier. I don't think I could have experienced the understanding of these steps that I got later any sooner, no matter how quick I worked them, right? The understanding in my body came long after I worked them anyway. Mm-hmm. So what was the rush to get them done? Why not sit down and be thorough? Right? I wasn't going to, like, I picked up on the concepts and the spiritual principles of the steps just by being around. Like, oh, hey, we suggest you show up and be of service and give back, right? Well, okay, I'm working step 12 now. Man, you should probably like pray and like try not to keep so busy. Oh, well, I kind of understand 11 now. Hey, don't forget when you're making mistakes to keep a daily record of that, right? And try to change them. Oh, shit, well, I'm working 10 already. It wasn't about, I think we start to apply them in our life long before we physically write them out on paper. And when we're writing them, it's not about the rush. It's about, hey, let me try to thoroughly examine myself as I go through this. There's no rush. I'm not going nowhere. It's hopefully.
Sure. Yeah. You're way better than me. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm not on 10 yet, and I don't have to do that at all. I'll do that when I get there.
Just sounding good, Billy. I was just trying to have sex early in recovery. Not worried about steps. Right. Just sounded like a good defense.
It's like, oh, shit, she's on step 6? Right. I should probably pick it up
Lewis
a little
sold
bit.
there for a minute. Well, she's on 6, and I sleep with her, and she's on 7. I've worked 13 steps.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. Osmosis. So in NA, let me not say in NA, because I've heard this is different in other areas. I've seen a lot of people online complain that they've gone to NA, and maybe this was just their perception, or maybe it's different in their area, but they've complained that it felt not religious, but definitely too pointed towards a Christian type God from the NA fellowship in their area, right? And like I said, maybe that was just their perception. Maybe they just went to a meeting, saw the step on the wall, and were pissed off and left. No idea. My experience in the Baltimore area has always been like, people really defend the idea to a higher power of your understanding. Atheists, whatever the fuck, Buddha, whoever, flying spaghetti monster, whatever, bro. That shit is yours. Don't let anybody take it from you, right? To the point where like somebody might mention old JC in a meeting, and that gets poo-pooed, right? People, hey, you can't talk about that shit here. Take that somewhere else, right? I don't feel like that is the idea around AA whatsoever. I feel like it's a lot less defended. Do they buy into the concept of freedom of choice of your God?
I mean, absolutely. I think I don't know if the amount of times God is said in the literature is more than NA. I'm guessing it probably is, just because.
Don't they say Jesus?
Substituting
They don't say
higher
Jesus.
power.
You sure?
Yeah.
That guy Robb Kelly said they said Jesus on page 11 in the big book.
I don't think they say Jesus.
I don't know. I don't have a fucking big
I'd
book.
be pretty.
Yeah.
I
It's going
would
by Robb Kelly.
Yeah, I would be pretty stunned.
I
Oh,
don't
they
know
have
that I
a
would
great
quote
way
Robb Kelly.
of kind of dancing around it and capitalizing, phrases like the broad highway and
What
things
in
like
the
that.
fuck is that?
And if you capitalize something, it's supposed to mean like
Is that where the Wright brothers flew?
the
Broad
right
highway? They took
they're,
off?
not capitalized. There's nothing about religion in the big book.
Don't y'all end your meetings with the damn...
With the Lord's Prayer?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty religious.
It is.
How the fuck does that work then?
Some people are really uncomfortable with that.
I
think I was at one point too. I don't think I wanted to hold anybody's hand either.
You hold hands.
Yeah.
We put our arms around
I
people.
know, it's way cooler.
Yeah,
We guys hug.
Put your arms around
I do
each
like
other.
the
I
hugs
like
way
hugs.
better.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I feel like
I shake hands. I feel like I'm closing a deal.
Right.
Right. Got business meeting. How you doing, Bob?
I feel like some women might be more comfortable with the holding hands in the
Yeah.
circle though, just because it less violating
Yeah.
goes on with holding hands. But yeah, I definitely dig the hugs. Fuck the handshakes.
So, and this is going to be maybe a dumb
Oh,
question.
hold on. Did he defend the Lord's Prayer yet?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
Sorry.
tradition. That's really probably most of it.
Yeah.
Just like the language in the book. It's
You're
just
absolutely
tradition.
right.
I'm so bothered
I think
by
it's tradition. And, my home group, we end with, actually, sometimes it's the Lord's Prayer. Sometimes it's the Serenity Prayer. Sometimes I feel a little bit uncomfortable with the Lord's Prayer. I don't know why it's there.
Talks about heaven and hell. It's
Yeah.
very religion specific.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe it's like
Our
the
Father,
addicts in AA
who
need
art
to
in
be
heaven.
overly the addicts in NA need to be overly cynical and critical of every single minor decision, and people in AA are just more accepting, like, meh, whatever, it's tradition, fuck it. Like,
God damn it, Billy. I'm highly offended by this Lord's Prayer in these meetings I don't go to. Bothers me greatly.
how dare you read it?
I can see how that would be off-putting to some people.
It's a little weird. There was a guy who started an NA meeting, and I had joined that home group, and they were saying that at the end, and I was like, I do not fucking like this at my home group. Like, but in general, at this point in my life, I don't give a fuck what other people do.
Yeah,
but
I
we've
just
been
think,
sober
what about,
for a
like
little
Jewish
bit,
people
so-
or Muslim people. You
Yeah.
gotta go say the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that would be
fuck
really
that.
weird. It's not very inclusive.
Yeah.
It's not.
What were you going to ask though?
Oh,
shit.
so does I've heard of like spiritual retreats and things in AA. Do they have conventions and other, I guess, lots of activities? I guess they call it Unity or something.
Yeah,
Unity
we have,
events?
we have plenty.
They do bingo.
We do a lot of bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. One time I was in like a GSR meeting, like a group service, meeting. I was the chair for my home group, and we were talking about events that we can hold to, possibly raise some money, to spend on, coins and things like that. And I brought up bingo, and there were some old timers there who was like, "Oh, so now we support gambling?" I'm like,
Oh shit! I never even thought about that. No. I actually kind of agree with them. I was making fun of them being old white guys playing bingo, but I kind of agree with that point. That is a.
it is a point.
Gambling?
I'm not affected by gambling,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I could see
It's
where
like a
people come-
50-50 is gambling. Like, yeah,
and
it's
a 50,
gambling for sure.
50-50. That's what that was part of my argument. Like,
Fine with
I see the
50-50,
cans
but
sitting-
fucking bingo is over the top.
that's the line right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Start
But we
throwing
have-
balls into it.
changes everything. God
Right.
damn it.
We have
That's a
plenty of
sex addicts
events,
meeting.
though.
What about the board that you spin with the numbers on it? That falls in the middle. That's a gray area.
What events do you guys have?
I mean, there's dances. There's
Boo.
Sock hops. They call them
Brutal.
sock hops.
Sock hops,
Yeah.
brutal.
Poodle skirts.
There's bingo. There's breakfast.
Do you have a speaker at your breakfast?
Yeah, we do.
Same thing.
We had paintball one time. Just saying.
Just once.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Was that like a
Yeah, just once.
district-wide event?
Yeah.
We call them
An
area.
area
Area,
events.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, same.
Fucking
district.
intergroup.
Yeah. It's an area, sir.
We have regions. Thank you. I don't know what your intergroup is.
But yeah, they did a paintball once.
I tried to talk my old area into laser tag, and they kept being like, well, you should join the goddamn events committee. And I'm like, I don't have time. I just want to play laser
I
tag.
just want to throw an idea and then come to that event.
Yes.
Right.
I just want to not go to another goddamn dance where I sit there and look at people.
Nobody dances anymore.
Frustrating. Do they have anything cool?
We got conventions. I mean, you guys got conventions too. So, we've got Young People's AA, which is YPA events, YPAA, Young People's AA.
Damn, they just discriminate automatically. Don't even worry about it. They do it from the top level down.
Yeah. There's plenty of like YPA events all over the world, which are usually more like cooler stuff like paintball and things like that. Usually they're trying to raise money to have a bigger conference.
What's the cutoff age for that?
It's young, just young at heart, man. As long as you're young at heart.
Well,
Tie your hair
why
and
do they
go.
even call it that?
Dye your hair and go.
A lot of the people who come there might have got sober young.
Hair transplant.
Might be like 70 now and got sober young.
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
I tell you, I think the biggest thing I'm jealous of is when you go on like a cruise or something and they're going to have a meeting and it's like, just says like 7 p.m. Friends of Bill. I'm like, that's fucking so cool.
Yeah. And you hear it at airports too.
Yeah.
It's like, can I have a friend of Bill come to Gate C?
Right.
That's so
I'm
cool.
So
Yeah,
I've
jealous.
been
that's
at
pretty
Wawa
neat.
sometimes and somebody is like recognizing me and be like, you friends with Bill?
Yes.
God,
That is the
That's
So
the
funny.
coolest code.
Yeah,
word.
so someone said that to me early on, and they knew my wife, and it was the first time I met him, and she's like, "Oh, you're friends with Bill W." And I'm like, "I don't. Who is he? Like, what's he look like?" Like, I didn't get the
I
reference.
met him before,
Yeah,
maybe?
right. I might have met him before, and she laughed because she realized immediately, like, I had no fucking clue what she was talking about.
That's
so.
hilarious.
And then I needed them to explain it to me. I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I got it."
I've seen friends of Jimmy on like boats before and
Yeah.
stuff too. Yeah.
And see,
I
I
have
would
seen
know
that.
that in a minute if you said,
Yeah.
"Oh, friends of Jimmy K," like I would know
Yeah.
that reference.
I've seen that.
That's the only time I purposefully identify with AA. And I don't even go to the meeting, but just with whoever I'm with, because I want to be like, I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm friends with Bill. It's cool.
I know.
I know what that means.
I'm allowed at this. I'm on the list.
Shit. I don't know. You
So-
guys, okay.
Well, are there ever any times where you've met people or seen people where you thought, well, maybe you should go check out NA, or maybe that would be a better fit
That's
for
a
you?
good ass question.
Yeah.
I mean, you also work in treatment. I don't know if
See,
I'm allowed to
and
say,
that's
so,
going to
yeah.
skew my answer a little bit
Right.
because
Well, that's okay. That's fine.
when I'm in a treatment setting, it also depends on, it could depend on age, where they're going home to, whether I know some people who are in that area who might be in NA, if they've had experience with AA that didn't necessarily work out,
They got blue
if
hair.
they want something
tattooed
different.
face, earrings.
Anybody
you need to go
that's-
to NA
Anybody that's wearing Cookie Monster pajamas,
If they're going
as
home,
their outdoor attire.
if they're going home to his area and he doesn't think they're going to stay clean, let's check out the NA meetings around there.
Right. Right.
Shit.
I mean, I would recommend. Look, honestly, to my core, I believe it's one and the same. But it depends on, in a professional sense. Sometimes it's like, where are you going home to? Who do I know in that area that I could kind of be your, almost like in between to meet somebody who's sober in NA. So yeah, I'll recommend it a lot.
Bra size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge. AA.
I mean,
Straight
AA
for you.
How much free time you've got to work a steps? I mean,
Yeah. Right. Free time.
All right. I'm going to chomp down there. Chill. You got anything else?
I don't think.
So what's your you really do believe both programs are the same thing?
yeah, I do.
Hmm.
I believe that we're doing the same work, right? We're going through the step, trust God, clean house, help others. That's what we're all doing. NA was, I think, created, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a more inclusive way through the steps, a more inclusive fellowship. I think AA has kind of turned into that. It might not be following the tradition of AA as it's written, but I think we're doing the same work. I think if I would have for example, ended up in NA and I had, the same kind of people that were teaching me how to go through the steps and help other people, I think I'd probably be in the same boat.
Yeah, and I mean, just my limited experience with, again, traveling. We spent some time out in Utah, very few meetings. There was mostly AA meetings that we went to. And of the 5 people that went to the meeting, like 2 of the people were like, yeah, it's exactly the same shit. And we started an NA meeting. And then the other 3 guys were like, no, fuck that. We're only over here. Like, it was just, it was almost like a divide. And they were all very supportive. They were like, oh, yeah, you go do that NA meeting. That's great. But they're like, that's not for us. That's just for you guys. Like, it was something different. So it was interesting.
I would say at this point, because I've heard of so many people with your type story that go to AA exclusively, I would say there probably is basically the same shit in both places. But I don't think that in AA that's following the literature per se. Like, I think their literature is still very different from what ours says, I guess. And I hope one day I can let go of the fact that I'm just picky about the whole, you're a fucking addict, go to an addict meeting, right? Like, I just hope that one day I get to a place where I can let that shit go. Because what the fuck does it matter what I think, right? People are getting happy and healthy. Why do I care where? And why do I need to be a stickler to wording?
Well, I think that the book needs to be updated. That is my, just one person. I mean, the fuck, I'm a drunk. Yeah. So I think that the book needs to be updated.
I mean, you're a heroin addict in an AA meeting. I don't know why. I don't know why we're taking any of your suggestions, really.
But I mean, I love AA. I'm never gonna switch. I don't find any reason to. I got everything I need in AA. Like I said, the book's a little outdated, but it's all in there.
Yeah, and areas and different stuff change. So we've been in areas where one fellowship was stronger. We've been in areas where the other fellowship was stronger. And it just, that can depend just on the, I don't know what you call it, home crowd or the area itself. Which one's more supported and more recovery and more attended.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I would never switch here. But if I had to move, I can't be sure of that, right? Because it would all depend on what it was like. I might go to NA somewhere else and it might be junk or not serious in that area. Yeah. Or there might not be any NA or something. So I can't say I'd never switch, but I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I considered it in this immediate area recently when I was looking for a sponsor because I didn't have anyone right in this immediate area that appealed to me.
Let's go to a fucking AA meeting, Billy.
So
let's swap.
Well, I mean, there was someone that I did, end up picking that was right in Harford County, which is still our same area, and it's someone that I could easily maintain a relationship with. And I know that if I drove 45 minutes down to Baltimore in that area, I could easily find someone. I just am totally unwilling to drive a half an hour. It seems so far. I'm busy, I want to drive 5 minutes. But I thought about hitting some AA meetings to find a sponsor directly in this immediate area.
If you talk to anybody that got clean in the early 80s from the Baltimore area, and I don't know what it was like up here at that point, but in the 80s in the Baltimore area, there were not even 7 NA meetings for the week in the early 80s. And so everybody did both. It's just what you did to get a meeting every day. And none of them had any problem with it, right? So it's almost like as NA meetings picked up and there became one for each day, even though this was all over the city, not like in your local area, people started having the ability to have resentments against AA and not like it, right? Like before that, there wasn't even that was, you needed AA, you needed everything. And so I guess it's a blessing we're in the place where we can make fun of each other and dislike each other. Like there's plenty of places to go.
Am I delving into some NA history and having more mature sponsors that know a little bit about that history, have always had nothing but respectful things to say about AA and that fellowship and, getting all this started. I mean, that's where all these things came from. So they all owe all that credit to Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob for coming up with, this formula that they came up with. And
Bill who?
Now we're fucking splitting hairs on, are you addicted to this or that? Are you opiates? Are you?
Yeah, we're blessed.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad problem.
Right. I'm glad that if somebody has a bad experience with NA, there's a different meeting. If somebody comes to me and they have a bad experience with AA, there's a different kind of meeting. If you don't like the people that are at your meeting, find a different one. If you don't like the program, find a different one. Yeah. There's plenty.
If you don't like shuffleboard and playing bridge and shit, you can come to NA.
Yeah.
Knees and knives in your readings.
Yeah. If you're a scratch golfer, I'll leave my phone number. We'd be happy to have you.
Man, Lewis, thank you so much for coming on
thanks
today.
for having
me. Thank you, Lewis. We appreciate it and being a good sport.
Yeah, and I think, dispelling a lot of the myths that I've heard over time and
too.
just having a good time talking about it, too. It was a blast.
Yeah, it was.
So if you're out there, if you're considering which program to go to, do whatever, man. Check them all out. Go to 6 meetings of each type and see which one you like better. Wherever you're comfortable, wherever you feel home, same 12 steps, same freedom. All right. See ya.
See ya.
Did you like this episode? Share it with people you think might get something out of it. Check out the rest of our episodes at recoverysortof.com. Also, while you're there, you can find ways to link up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, anything. We're always looking for new ideas. Got an idea you want us to look into? Reach out to us.